Well, my guild and I had this one incident, after which our grimmest dwarf warrior couldn't even look at books for a week, and it all started with a quest on the notice board, in the dimly lit hall of our guild, which smelled of ale and old wood, hung a piece of parchment. Written on it in a trembling hand were the words, "Save our village from the demon of whispering nightmares." The village elder, a thin man with frightened eyes, told us that horrifying, mind-breaking sounds were coming from the cave on the hill, keeping the entire region awake at night. Our team took the quest. Our leader, Thoric the dwarf, a battle-hardened warrior with a beard down to his belt and a massive two-handed axe on his back. Elara, an elven sorceress in a blue robe, whose fingers glowed with azure light. Finn, an agile rogue in leather armor, with a pair of daggers at his belt. And well, me, the humble storyteller. We walked through a thick, dark forest under the canopy of ancient trees until we reached the cave entrance. It was a gaping black hole in the rock face, exhaling cold. And from within, we heard it, ... the whisper. It was a series of strange, broken phrases in some demonic tongue, full of pain and suffering. Thoric gripped his axe. Elara began to prepare a spell. We lit our torches, and their orange light danced on the wet cave walls, from which hung stalactites as sharp as daggers. The deeper we went, the louder and more insane the whispering became. We heard phrases like, "O moon Ulcer," on the velvet of night, and "My soul is a scorpion in a jar of sorrow." We were certain it was the ritual of some powerful chaos lord. Finally, we reached the central chamber. It was a huge cavern with an underground lake, and in its center stood a large crystal, glowing dimly in the dark, re-prepared for a battle to the death. Thoric kicked the door in. Oh, sorry, there was no door. We burst into the chamber with battle cries, and we froze. In the middle of the cave, on a large flat stone, stood a small, scrawny goblin in a ragged loincloth. In his thin green hands, he held a huge, stolen, leather-bound book. He was standing in a dramatic pose, loudly reciting poetry with a terrible accent. It wasn't a demon. It was a beginner goblin poet practicing his declamation. A deafening silence fell. The goblin slowly raised his eyes to us, let out a tiny squeal, dropped the book, and scampered away into a dark tunnel. We were left standing in the middle of the cave. Elara chuckled softly. Finn sat on the floor and laughed until he cried. And Thoric walked over to the book, read a few lines, and his face turned to stone with disgust. It was the worst poetry he had ever seen. We returned to the guild with the book as proof. The mission report was the most ridiculous in history. The demon of whispering nightmares became our inside joke. And ever since that day, our mighty dwarf warrior Thoric has hated poetry more than elven beer.